In this video, you'll enjoy the recap explanation of Rick and Morty from beginning to end. Rick and Morty is a sitcom series of 6 seasons, starting in 2013 and ending in 2021, with a total of 61 episodes. It's a crazy animated science fiction show that follows the adventures of an eccentric and alcoholic scientist named Rick Sanchez and his good-hearted but easily influenced grandson, Morty Smith. The show is a unique mix of sci-fi, humor, and family drama, with lots of unexpected twists and turns. One minute you're laughing out loud, and the next you're contemplating the meaning of life. The first episode introduces us to the characters and the crazy dynamics of the show. The main character, Rick Sanchez, is a total brainiac, the show's protagonist, who invents some wild gadgets and has the smarts to travel through different dimensions and explore the universe. But he's a total mess as well. He's always drinking, super negative, and doesn't give a flip about morality or anyone else really. He's not exactly Mr. Nice Guy, and he can be a bit of a jerk to his own family. But even with all his flaws, Rick is still an awesome grandpa to Morty, taking him on epic adventures where they encounter all kinds of weird creatures and sci-fi craziness. Overall, Rick is a complicated dude who's not easy to figure out. He's got a lot going on under the surface. Okay, now Morty Smith. He's the teenage grandson of Rick and is generally a good-natured and kind-hearted guy, but he's also easily influenced by those around him. He's a bit of a pushover at first and not really up for the weird and often dangerous situations Rick drags him into, but he gets braver as the show progresses. While Morty might not be the brightest bulb in the box like his grandpa, he's got a good heart and is always willing to do the right thing. He struggles with the moral implications of some of Rick's actions and questions the morality of the universe they live in. Overall, Morty is like the yin to Rick's yang, bringing empathy and compassion to the often dark and surreal world of the show. Morty has an older sister too, Summer. At first, she seems like a typical teenage girl, but she becomes more involved in Rick and Morty's crazy adventures as the show progresses. Then there's Beth, Morty and Summer's mom, and Rick's daughter. She struggles with her own insecurities and her strained relationship with her father. And let's not forget Jerry, Beth's husband, who's often portrayed as a bumbling and insecure man who clashes with Rick. Then we see Bird Person, who's Rick's best friend and ally, and is a humanoid bird-like creature from another planet. There's also Mr. Poopy Butthole, Squanchy, and plenty more with short shots in the show. All of these characters have their own quirks and storylines that add to the humor and complexity of it. So, the show begins when the super weird scientist Rick comes back to his daughter's house after being away for a long time and convinces Morty to join him on a pretty crazy interdimensional adventure. Basically, they travel to this alternate dimension where they have to avoid getting caught by the space police and get their hands on these rare seeds called mega seeds. Morty gets more and more worried about the whole thing, but Rick doesn't seem to care. The episode sets up a lot of stuff that comes up in the rest of the show, like the cool sci-fi scenes, the messed up family dynamic between Morty's parents, which is a total wild card. So in the first season, we get to see the wild adventures of Rick and Morty as they travel to different dimensions and parallel universes with Rick's super cool portal gun. This nifty device lets them jump between different parallel universes and dimensions. They meet all sorts of crazy aliens, explore new universes, and even deal with interdimensional customs and politics. Super advanced, huh? In one of the episodes, when they get back from an adventure, Morty's family is all freaked out because they thought he was missing or something. His dad, Jerry, gets real mad and doesn't want Morty to go on any more adventures with Rick because he thinks it's making Morty's schoolwork suffer. But when Morty impresses them by reciting the square root of pi and the first law of thermodynamics, they let him stay with Rick. Morty's pretty surprised himself that he knows all this stuff, but it's just one of the many crazy things in a wild ride that's happening in the show. As the season goes on, we see Rick giving Morty a serum that makes his crush, Jessica, fall in love with him for a night. However, things quickly go wrong when Morty accidentally spreads the serum to the entire school, causing chaos and destruction. As Morty tries to fix the situation, he discovers that the serum has mutated and turned everyone into horrifying monsters. Meanwhile, Rick is dealing with his own problems after he gets into a fight with an alien dictator over intergalactic cable TV. Later on, not so bright Morty actually convinces Rick to buy him an intimate robot from an alien pawn shop. Can you believe that? But wait, it gets even crazier. The robot ends up getting pregnant and gives birth to a half-human, half-alien baby. I mean, Who could have seen that coming? Morty decides to name the little bundle of joy Gazorpazorp Jr. Talk about the dark humor of the series. Then we see Bird Person, who becomes a new friend and ally to the duo. After becoming friends, they mess around with time travel, leading to some crazy consequences that they try to fix by altering the timeline over and over. Now this one's wild. Rick, Morty, and Summer find themselves in a post-apocalyptic world where strange creatures called Cronenbergs have taken over. To set things right, they travel to a parallel universe where that universe's version of themselves had died. But the Rick and Morty of that universe end up coming to their world and turning everyone into Cronenbergs by accident. And hold on to your hats, folks, because in another mind-bending episode, Rick and Morty go on a wild ride inside a teeny tiny universe that's actually a battery. But get this, they accidentally created an entire world of intelligent beings who worship them like deities. Can you even imagine? It's a crazy and mind-blowing adventure we see in the show. Some episodes later, we witness the exciting and dramatic wedding of Bird Person and his new flame, Tammy, which turns out to be a disastrous trap set by the Galactic Federation. This results in Rick and his family being forced to flee the scene and seek refuge on a planet inhabited by Bird Person's people, the Bird People. The episode takes us on a wild ride as we watch the Galactic Federation relentlessly track down and attack the Bird Person's planet, leading to an epic showdown between Rick and the Federation. It's a high-stakes situation that keeps us on the edge of our seats till the very end. Unfortunately though, Bird Person is killed, and things don't end well for Rick as he gets captured by the Federation and is taken to prison. Meanwhile, his family is forced to return to Earth without him. So after being captured by the Galactic Federation, Rick doesn't just magically escape. Okay, so let's free Rick to keep the show interesting. Some episodes later in the show, we get to see Rick at his craziest yet as he turns himself into a pickle to avoid family therapy. But things go south real quick when he gets washed down a drain and ends up in a sewer with only roaches and rats for company. Well, he has to fight them off to stay alive, but Rick being Rick, he eventually finds a way out by building himself a suit out of the parts of the rats he killed and battles his way to the surface. From there, he heads straight to the Federation headquarters and goes on a rampage. I mean, he goes on a killing spree and takes down everyone in the building, including a tough Russian agent who's out to kill him. And the fact that it's all done by a pickle in a rat suit makes it even more hilarious. By the end of the episode, Rick has single-handedly destroyed the Federation and reunited with his family. It's amazing to see how Rick's mind works in this episode. Despite being in a dire situation, he manages to use his intelligence and resourcefulness to create something out of nothing, showing us that there's always a way out of any problem, no matter how seemingly impossible it may be. Some episodes later, Morty confronts Rick about constantly wiping his memory to cover up their adventures. Morty is like, "I want to see what you're erasing, bro." And surprisingly, Rick agrees to let Morty choose which memories to see. But as he watches them, Morty realizes that some of them are too traumatic or embarrassing to handle. They start wiping each other's memories to avoid dealing with the fallout, but things quickly spiral out of control as they forget important details about their lives. Honestly, it's a bit of a train wreck, but it's also hilarious. It's like watching two idiots dig themselves deeper and deeper into a hole. Fortunately, Summer steps in to restore their memories, and they have a heart-to-heart moment of reconciliation. They still care about each other on some level. Some episodes later, we see Beth struggling with her own identity and her relationship with her father, Rick. She confronts Rick about her childhood memories and asks if he ever used his portal gun to create a clone of her. Rick admits that he did, and we start exploring the ramifications of this revelation. They show us Beth creating a clone of herself to explore the universe and find out who she really is. She decides to stay with her family, but allows the clone to take her place and live a life of adventure. Some episodes later, we see the Citadel of Ricks. It's a metropolis populated by various versions of Rick and Morty from different dimensions. It follows 4 different storylines that converge in unexpected ways. In one storyline, we see a group of Mortys working together in a factory, and one of the Mortys says, "Welcome to the darkest year of our adventures," and they produce a serum used to control their Ricks. Meanwhile, in another storyline, we see a group of Ricks running for office in the Citadel's election. There's also a group of police officers who are investigating a mysterious drug called wafer thin mint that's causing chaos in the city. And finally, we see evil Morty running for president of the Citadel. One of his campaign ads was like, "The first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna come and I'm gonna bring my wife back. Maureen, you bitch, she was my wife." The episode dives into themes such as corruption, power dynamics, and free will, and it's both hilarious and thought-provoking. When we go further, we see Rick has his own private bathroom with a complex security system to prevent unauthorized access. Somehow, he discovers that someone's been using his private bathroom without permission. Now, we all know how protective Rick is of his private space, so you can imagine how mad he gets. And who does he find out is the culprit? None other than a guy named Tony. But wait, Tony's actually working with Jerry, Beth's ex-husband, to create an app that connects people who need to use a bathroom with people who have a private one. Blown away by that crappy business idea, in one of the more thought-provoking episodes, Morty and Rick grapple with the consequences of their dangerous adventures. Morty starts to feel like his experiences with Rick have made him value human life less, leading to a tense argument between the two. To make amends, Rick gives Morty the power to choose their next adventure. Morty picks something risky, but Rick pulls a surprise by giving them a remote that simulates the experiences of dying without actually killing them, so they can just do whatever they want without fear of dying. Meanwhile, we're introduced to Rick's aquatic rival, Mr. Nimbus, who has control over the seas and even the police force. We learn that there's a deeper history between the two than we initially thought. However, despite Rick's attempts to escape Mr. Nimbus's clutches, he causes a lot of trouble for him. Rick's lucky and unexpected escapes lead to a sort of understanding between the two rivals eventually. So, in the next few episodes, we see some major plot twists and character development. First, Rick's old pal, Bird Person, is saved by Rick, but decides to put his daughter first, leaving their friendship in the past. This leads to a fight between Rick and Morty, causing Rick to replace Morty with two crows and realize how toxic their relationship had become. But eventually, Morty convinces Rick to go on a classic adventure, and they end up at the Citadel, where they encounter Evil Morty, who has become the president and has a sinister plan to sacrifice the Citadel to escape the multiverse Rick created. When our Rick refuses to join him, Evil Morty kills his wife and daughter and escapes. Meanwhile, Rick goes on a revenge spree, killing many other Ricks until he realizes that the original culprit is still out there. In the end, he abandons his quest and reunites with Beth in a different universe, while Morty and Rick narrowly escape the Citadel's destruction. Now it's time for the latest season of Rick and Morty. So the season starts with Rick and Morty stranded in space after the Citadel is destroyed, and they end up getting locked up inside. But they get saved by the character introduced before, Space Beth, and then they go on an adventure to travel through different universes to get back to their own. Meanwhile, Summer takes charge and goes on a mission to rescue her family, and Beth and Space Beth come along for the ride. Then, Beth finds out that Rick has somnambulism and has been using a machine called a somnambulator to enslave his night self to do chores like exercising. The whole Smith family is stoked to have their night selves do all the work for them, with each person wanting something different from their night self. Jerry, being the lazy guy he is, just wants his night self to be a pen pal, which ends up saving the Smiths' butts because the Night family eventually rebels against being enslaved. The Smiths get what they want without having to do any work, and they realize that their night selves could become future villains, with Night Summer being the potential baddie. Personally, I find Night Summer to be an intriguing villain, because she not only has a proper victory over Rick, but it also shows that Summer doesn't have the best opinion of her grandfather. And of course, they introduce us to Rick Prime as the next villain. But who knows what's going to happen with Night Summer. Overall, it's been a pretty wild ride so far, so let's come to the end. It's Christmas time, and Rick gives the Smith family gifts from different dimensions, including a lightsaber for Morty. But then it's revealed that the Rick they've been interacting with is actually a robot. Morty is disappointed in Rick for tricking them, but the robot, who was programmed to love the Smiths, is relieved to finally reveal the truth. However, Morty decides not to ruin the family's holiday by exposing the robot's true identity. Later on, the president shows up, and Morty takes him and his team down to Rick's secret lab, which is a big no-no. The president betrays Morty and takes the lightsaber, causing a catastrophic event that sends everyone into space. Morty enlists Robot Rick's help, but he sacrifices himself to save the president's life, causing Morty to realize that he actually cares about the robot. Luckily, Rick saves the day and brings everyone back to the garage using his portal gun. He realizes that he was wrong for shutting Morty down and invites him to join in the hunt for Rick Prime. And in a touching moment, Robot Rick's last words reveal that the real Rick built him to express his real love for the family, even though he's just not very good at showing it. So, we've explored everything in the show, from its creation to its characters and complicated storylines. Whether you're a hardcore fan or a newbie, I'm sure you learned something interesting from this video. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll catch you in the next one.